You have access to the GIFs. What I'm going to do now is I want to show you something that Google has. This is an amazing, amazing tool. It's called Rising Retail Categories. Um, and it's honestly, it's kind of nuts to me that this isn't a little bit more popular. What Google is doing is
The
using,
best kept secret.
right? No, it's they've got 70 million demographic and psychographic profiling factors, so they know every human on the planet better than anybody else does, and they have all of the data from a search and intent perspective. And so what Google has built inside Think with Google, and I'll drop this in a chat too. If I had to start over from scratch and I want to start at an e-commerce store, this is where I would start my research. I'm not saying this would be the sole decision maker in what it is that I ended up choosing, but this is where I would start my research. What Google is showing us is from a retail perspective, what's moving. And so the very first thing I'll say is I prefer yearly data. That's just my soft opinion. I don't like things that are flash in the pan. Yeah, exactly.
Hey, so me.
Uh, Now, with that said, if you want to be super nimble and you're one of those, marketers that's just like moves fast, absolute assassin, has the liquidity and the wherewithal to kind of contend with that, Google's showing you weekly trend changes. So you can choose your geographic positioning. I'm going to choose the United States since that's where I am. And then you can say what your date range is. Let's say I go annual. Now, here's what's cool is automatically I'm blown away by what it's telling me. Here's top trending categories, but it gets better. If I choose one of these categories, look what happens here on the right-hand side. So I choose laboratory chemicals and breakout, I think, and I'm not clear on Google's nomenclature, but I think it means that it's like off the chart, so to speak, because you can see that it climbs and all of a sudden Google just says breakout. It doesn't even give us a percentage. And now I've got nitric acid, potassium hydroxide, gallium. Now, y'all, this actually excites me because I know it's going to scare most people away. You've got shipping and fulfillment issues. I imagine Google's probably going to have some issues with this, by the way. I don't know that we'd be able to sell this with Google Ads, but I like seeing anything that's kind of obscure. Like John mentioned garage shelves. I see laboratory chemicals. And what this tells me is there's something, this could have been COVID related. Maybe there's a major shift. Maybe Elon Musk just launched a new, chemistry lab for kids or whatever. This doesn't mean that I'm going to sell laboratory chemicals, right? Maybe I'm going to sell beakers. What's the old adage? Like if there's a gold rush, sells shovels and picks. But what this is doing is it's giving me an indication as to where, from a retail perspective, Google thinks things are going. And I think if you try to bull center the lane, you might end up being just another looky-loo me too. But if you do what I just said, and if people are buying laboratory chemicals and I'm going to go sell beakers and goggles, now what I'm doing is hopefully potentially aligning with the trend in a way that isn't necessarily putting me at the mercy of being somebody who's, getting on the bandwagon. Any comments on that, John?
You know who one of the companies profited the most, I wouldn't say companies, but I guess industries or niches that profited the most from COVID was what's that?
Digital marketers.
Oh, yeah, probably. But the plastic bottle manufacturers. And I'm sure everyone on this call probably has seen it. They were putting hand sanitizer in shampoo bottles and relabeling them.
Yeah.
So there was a shortage of plastic bottles. People that were selling things in plastic bottles couldn't even find the supply to put their normal product, non-COVID related, in plastic bottles. So when hand sanitizer blew through the roof, that's why you saw like swab bottles, and you're like, that's the same swab shampoo bottle I have at home on my kid's bathtub. All of a sudden it says hand sanitizer on it. It's like this large tube and like the rounded top and the pop top, and I'm like, that's a shampoo bottle. But a lot of clients that we have that that company that sells hair care, they're like, we have to kind of like slow down our Google ads. We can't even find bottles to put our shampoo in because of COVID. So that's just something that has that secondary effect that that these trending categories go. I would say yearly laboratory chemicals, that in my opinion, ethanol is not on a list, which ethanol is the 80% ingredients in hand sanitizer, which is odd. But yeah, laboratory chemicals, that's interesting. That's got to be COVID related. I think that.
Yep. So here's what I would really do if I wanted to build a business around this. I'd go figure out what it is. Look at this, dude. There's a 3-pack for nitric acid. Nia says potassium hydroxide liquid soap definitely must be COVID related. Yeah. So we'd go figure out what it is people are using this for. And again, you don't have to sell the chemical per se. If people are using it for soap making, then maybe there's like soap making equipment that we can go,
pumps.
Capture, manufacture. Yeah, pumps. That's exactly right. Figure out the trend, and now it opens up not just an industry, it opens up industries. And I really love this primary and secondary navigation. Look at this. This excites me too. Sprinkler controls. Like what a weird, random, obscure. I actually think this was also an option when I have a video that I'm going to share with everybody on this exact thing. Hand sanitizer, of course. corsages and boutonnieres.
Well, the wedding industry now is
booming.
boomed. Yeah, because no one could have a wedding last year.
Yeah. So again, I'm not telling you to go sell corsages, but what I am saying is this just gave you a massive amount of lead intelligence, data intelligence, heavy machinery. That's also really interesting too. It makes sense to me that these guys would be on the back up. Baseball and softball protective gear. We have 2 clients that sell baseball equipment. One of them is one of the largest baseball suppliers, I think, in the country.
Can I share my screen? Actually, this is a company that when you look at it, you're like, oh, yeah, this person is kind of that savvy, quick moving marketer that Cosman talked about. When you look at their website, why would a solar lighting and garden decor place all of a sudden sell PPE? It's because obviously that's pandemic related. This is not a pandemic related company. And all of a sudden it's like, here's all of a sudden all these things that come about. Well, when you look at just this last like 3 weeks, and then you sort by conversions, I was like, oh yeah, the vinyl gloves, 16 clicks, 5 sales, 1,500% return on ad spend. Oh, they just stuck vinyl gloves on their website. And because that was a trending item that was selling, he ended up having some relationship with someone, I forget in whatever country. He's like, hey, John, I have like 1,000 boxes of gloves. I'm like, why? He goes, oh, I'm just going to sell them. They're going to sell them. I'm like, you sell glass butterfly jars, solar lamps for the driveway. Like what? And he's like, yeah, just stick it on there. I'm like, okay. So I put it on there and then they just, all right, 1,500% return on ad spend in the last 3 weeks. I'm like, good for you. But that was because he had his ear to the ground. So not saying that you have to build a business off of this like kind of flash and pan stuff, but this is a true testament to what Cosmo was saying is like, if you can kind of see where trends are going, you can help be the supplier of that trend. Great.
I think that what you just said needs to be reinforced a little bit. If you got an existing store, existing products, y'all protect your brand. Yeah. I don't agree with what that client did. I think that that's actually a flawed model.
I told him not to do it too.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that he's making money. It shows you how well that it works. What we're talking about here is if you don't know where to go, and I know that some of you, or you've already been successful and you're trying to figure out where else to go, I just want you to see the data that Google makes available and accessible. And the fact that this dude can throw gloves at a weird random ass site just based solely on the fact that he knew where the trend was going, I think speaks to kind of the efficacy of this model.
Now, in the other side, that he bought gloves, alcohol wipes, and masks, and only the gloves are selling. So he's probably losing out on the other two because people don't come to his website for that stuff, but they just so happened to, there was a shortage and he was able to hop on that bandwagon within like a week. So that's a very, very, very simple case, but it does lend itself to saying if you can build a brand that will survive the trend and you can continue on with that, then that's a great area. Like, bottle manufacturers aren't going away anytime soon. I literally have a plastic bottle next to me. And it's water, it's not COVID related, but that's just a good example of what Cosmo's sharing.
Well, I wouldn't get greedy either. When I'm looking at this, you can see like everybody's inclination is to go pay attention to the 500%, 400%, 300%. I would take a look at some of these, slow and steady incremental medical furniture. Y'all, we have a client who's in the medical device space. They mint money. John and I were on the phone with, how much am I allowed to say? John and I were on the phone with the 2 owners who are related. And one of them was complaining about how much work they had to do on the fulfillment end because they were selling so much more than they're ever used to selling. She was actually mad. And I mean, like legitimately like
don't scale. I can't keep up.
This is annoying. Stamps basically was the feedback that we were given. So there are so many like amazing niches. And instead of just go spinning a globe or here's what most e-commerce store owners do in my experience is they go find the manufacturer first. They're hitting up Alibaba or they're finding, like, oh, I think this looks cool and it's at a good rate. Don't do that. Figure out where your interest is. Where's your traffic? And there's another layer to this incidentally, but I just want to briefly go over the remainder of this exercise. You can see from a geographic region where your interest is. I also think this is really helpful for fulfillment too. Now, if I'm selling party hats, it doesn't matter, right? Because they weigh nothing. If I'm selling medical furniture, and let's say I'm, in the Midwest or I'm drop shipping from wherever, and I know most of my interest is coming basically from California and Texas, that's a consideration from a fulfillment perspective. So make sure you take in the logistical requirements behind the business that you might be starting. This is tool number 1. Tool number 2 is actually linked to here, but I've got it down here. Google Trends. Google Trends does basically the same thing that we just did, but it allows you to benchmark elements and items against each other. So I'm just going to pick something at random. We'll do Spongel. And we get to slice and dice the data just in mildly different ways. So I can see like 2004 to present, like, oh my goodness, this thing has been on nothing but a tear on the uprise, right? And it's really interesting because if I just looked at the past 12 months, you actually kind of think like, oh, this is sort of waning, interest is dropping. But if you look in its entirety, or even the last 5 years, you just get a different sense as to where particular markets are going. This is the reason, check this out, this is insane. John and I, at our agency, we used to offer website design and development. If you look at Google Trends for website design, and John's the very first one to spot this, you know, I think we quit here or something. When did we pull out website design, John? Like 20?
Of course, you look at the point where it all of a sudden has an uptick.
but it was just like, all right, let's get out while we
Yeah.
still can. While this is a really good way to begin identifying trends in an industry from an overarching perspective. So I like the rising retail categories because it gives you a 12-month sort of perspective, but I don't want to hop on a ship that's sinking right when, you know, the swell came and made me think that it's popping back up. So, and then again, I don't know why I'm not using an e-commerce product for this comparison. It's just what popped into my head. But you can start to see too, when you visualize them against each other, there are certain products where you're like, oh my goodness, there's no parity here, even though I thought there was. Or, you know, search volume is completely different, even though I thought that there'd be a little bit more in the way of, like, let's say I did, damn it. There we go. And then my Spongel versus my toiletries. I don't know what any of that is, by the way. You'd have to go to school on it and figure it out. But now you're getting a sense as to what I didn't really have here. You know, like Spongel is shooting up faster, obviously, but I didn't know from a volume perspective it was so much bigger. So as you're going to school in these industries, get a really solid sense of the trends, and then do the viability study. Everybody's seen this document. You have access to it from the GIFs link. The viability study is going to give you a sense as to how profitable you can be. Figure out how much you want to spend. I want to spend $2,000 a month because that's the minimum. I know the average CPC in smart shopping is 56 cents. Yours could be double that. We don't know. Take a good guess. What's your net profit based on what you know you can source this product at? You know, it's $50 and 150 lifetime value. How's your conversion rate going to be? If your site is great and you have relevant traffic, it'll be high. We have conversion rates upwards of 30%. If your site is crap or the traffic isn't relevant, it's going to be low. But over time, you can say like, oh, wow, I'd be making 800%, you know, ROAS lifetime. That's great. Or, you know, you could end up in a situation where, let's say you're making $4 and $9, you're losing money month over month. This product doesn't work. This is an amazing tool that just draws out in crayon and black and white what's possible from a profitability perspective. And then, in case anybody wants, I've got a video tutorial walking through exactly what I just walked through from a year ago. And I will drop this into chat too, so you can see me. Actually, what was interesting is on the video, I did it live. I found a really amazing product that I thought was very viable from an e-com perspective. I've checked it on trends since. It's sort of plateaued a little bit, but it's a cool exercise to run through.